Cher's mother abandoned her at a children's home when she was just an infant, paying $4.50 a week for her care. The woman who would become entertainment's most indestructible icon started life as an unwanted child in institutional care. What happened next shaped everything we think we know, but the real story will shatter every assumption. Her real name is Sherilyn Sarkisian, born May 20th, 1946 in El Centro, California. But what most don't know is that her earliest memories weren't of home, they were of strangers. Most celebrities manufacture sob stories for sympathy. Cher buried her real nightmare for decades because it was too painful to face. What I uncovered reveals a brutal pattern of abandonment that forged the woman who refuses to disappear. Her father, John Sarkisian, was an Armenian-American truck driver with a gambling addiction who disappeared from her life early. Her mother, Georgia Holt, was a young woman struggling with poverty during the Great Depression. When Cher was just an infant, Georgia made a decision born of desperation. She placed her daughter in a children's home in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and essentially abandoned her there. Georgia paid the orphanage $4.50 a week for Cher's care, when she could afford it, although she did visit weekly. She finally reclaimed her daughter from the orphanage around the time that Cher was able to walk. Cher said it wasn't until Holt passed that she cried when recalling this time in their lives. The future superstar spent her earliest months in institutional care, surrounded by strangers while her mother tried to build a life she could barely manage. Cher struggled with reading and learning as a child. She has said she had trouble in school and didn't understand why learning seemed harder for her than for others. It wasn't until later in life that she was diagnosed with dyslexia, a learning disorder that affects reading and language processing. Young Cher stared at scrambled letters while classmates read effortlessly. Teachers branded her lazy. Kids mocked her failures. Numbers made no sense to her developing brain, a condition that was not well understood during those days. These struggles affected her self-esteem growing up, but she credits her creativity and strong will for helping her succeed despite the challenges. While Cher was struggling at school, her childhood became more chaotic as her mother, Georgia, married multiple times, 7 marriages in total. Each new stepfather saw Cher as baggage. She packed her life into boxes repeatedly, learning that home was temporary and love had conditions. The constant moving meant Cher attended numerous schools. She never stayed anywhere long enough to get the help she desperately needed for her undiagnosed learning disabilities. By her teens, she had developed such severe anxiety about her academic failures that simple tasks felt overwhelming. But there was one escape that made everything else disappear: music. Like millions of teenage girls in the 1950s, Cher was obsessed with Elvis Presley. His voice, his rebellion, his refusal to be contained, it spoke to something desperate inside her. Then, in the most unlikely of circumstances, Hollywood came to her. At 15, walking down a street in Los Angeles, Cher nearly got hit by a car. The driver jumped out, apologizing profusely. It was Warren Beatty, who at the time was already a rising star. Beatty was struck by her unusual beauty and asked her out. They dated briefly, but Cher knew she was out of his league. The relationship fizzled quickly. Beatty was a man. She was still a child trying to figure out who she was. But it gave her something invaluable. The first glimpse that maybe she belonged in this world after all. In 1962, something happened that would alter the trajectory of Cher's entire life. At 16, living in yet another unstable household with another stepfather who resented her presence, she made a decision to leave her house. She dropped out of high school in the second week of 11th grade and moved to Hollywood with barely any money and no plan beyond escaping the chaos of her childhood. Most teenagers who run away to Hollywood end up broken and forgotten. But Cher wasn't running toward fame, she was running toward survival. That brief taste of being wanted by someone like Warren Beatty had shown her something crucial. She had power she didn't even understand yet. At a coffee shop, this broken 16-year-old with a famous ex-boyfriend met 27-year-old Salvatore Bono. He was wearing a mustard-colored shirt with white collar and Cuban heel boots that would later be called Beatle boots. Cher later compared their meeting to Tony and Maria's in West Side Story, saying everyone and everything else just faded away. But it wasn't love at first sight, at least not romantic love. Sonny worked for the legendary producer Phil Spector as a promotion man and general assistant. He was 11 years older, but Cher later said his childish personality made their age gap irrelevant. More importantly, he offered her something she'd never had: stability without judgment. Their relationship began when Bono offered Cher a place to stay as his housekeeper. She would have to cook and clean in exchange for her to stay at his place. Cher no longer wanted to live with her mother, and this deal came as no brainer. Over time, their relationship evolved from roommates to lovers. But first, they became something Cher had never experienced: best friends. The two became inseparable companions before becoming romantic partners. Sonny didn't try to fix her learning disabilities or make her feel ashamed of dropping out. Instead, he brought her to Phil Spector's recording sessions, where her distinctive deep voice began appearing as backup vocals on various recordings. He didn't discover her voice. He recognized her damage. It matched his own abandoned childhood. Sonny and Cher's legendary partnership wasn't born from romance. It was born from two damaged souls recognizing their shared understanding of abandonment and survival. Their early relationship was complicated and controversial. She was barely 18 when they began performing together. But for Cher, Sonny represented something she'd never had: stability, and someone who believed in her potential despite her struggles. Those learning disabilities that destroyed her confidence in school had actually rewired her brain for different kinds of intelligence: emotional, creative, and intuitive. When I Got You Babe hit #1 in 1965, it proved what Cher had always needed to believe: she deserved to exist exactly as she was. Success became Cher's golden cage. After their fame skyrocketed, Bono became controlling. He interfered in her clothes, songs, friends, thoughts. The man who saved her from chaos gradually became another form of captivity. By 1972, at just 26, she felt trapped in a loveless marriage and was almost driven to harm herself. She wrote in her memoir, "She stepped onto her hotel balcony in Las Vegas and looked down. I was dizzy with loneliness. I saw how easy it would be to step over the edge and simply disappear. For a few crazy minutes, I couldn't imagine any other option. I did this 5 or 6 times," she said. Cher wrote songs that Sonny dismissed. She had ideas he ignored. An empowered Cher realized, "I don't have to jump off. I can just leave him." This time, she had something she'd never possessed before: the confidence that came from proven success. She knew she could survive on her own. In 1974, Cher divorced Sonny, knowing it would destroy their professional partnership and possibly her career. Without Sonny's structure, Cher discovered something terrifying: the dyslexia and dyscalculia that had shaped her childhood hadn't disappeared. Simple tasks like managing finances or reading contracts became overwhelming. The woman who commanded television audiences felt lost handling basic adult responsibilities alone. Her marriage to Gregg Allman became tabloid fodder. But the real story was far more devastating than what the press reported. Just 3 days after her divorce from Sonny was finalized in 1975, Cher married the Southern rock legend. 9 days later, she filed for divorce because she found that Allman's heroin and liquor problems were too much for her to handle. The breaking point came when Allman passed out face first into a plate of spaghetti at an awards banquet. They separated, reconciled when Cher discovered she was pregnant with their son Elijah, then divorced again. When they tried to tour together, fights broke out between Allman Brothers fans and Cher fans, forcing her to cancel shows. The marriage finally ended in 1979, leaving Cher emotionally shattered and professionally adrift. The late 1970s became Cher's professional purgatory. After signing a $2.5 million contract with Warner Brothers, she released a string of commercial and critical failures from 1975 to 1977. Stars, I'd Rather Believe in You, Cherished, and To the Hard Way. Each album flopped harder than the last. Record executives who once courted her stopped returning calls. The variety show offers dried up. Critics wrote her obituary with cruel satisfaction. The girl who'd survived everything was finally finished. By 1979, at 33, the entertainment industry had moved on without her. In the early 1980s, at what seemed like career death, Cher walked into recording studios and movie auditions with a new weapon: the absolute certainty that she'd survived worse. She'd been discarded by teachers, stepfathers, and critics her entire life. This was just another Tuesday. When casting directors of 1983 thriller Silkwood initially dismissed her as just a singer, she didn't argue. She simply gave a reading so powerful it silenced every doubters in the room. The 1980s weren't just Cher's comeback, they were her total reinvention. Her Oscar nomination for Silkwood proved she could act. When she finally won the award for Moonstruck in 1988, her acceptance speech was brief but loaded with meaning for everyone who'd ever been underestimated. Every teacher who'd dismissed her, every executive who'd dropped her, every critic who'd written her obituary was watching her hold that golden statue. In 1998, at 52, when female performers are typically considered past their prime, Cher released Believe. The song changed pop music forever by being the first mainstream hit to use auto-tune as a creative instrument rather than just pitch correction. The woman, told she couldn't sing properly, created the sound that defined the next 2 decades of popular music. Believe isn't about romantic love. It's about resurrection. Every line reflects Cher's journey from abandoned infant to immortal icon. The farewell tour that followed was supposed to be her goodbye. Instead, it became the highest-grossing tour by a female artist at that time, proving that Cher had turned farewell into victory lap. Today, at 78, Cher refuses to disappear. What I learned from her story isn't about fame or talent. It's about an infant abandoned in institutional care, dismissed by teachers, controlled by partners, written off by industries, who never stopped believing she deserved to exist exactly as she was. Every comeback was proof. Every reinvention was survival. The learning disabilities that made her feel stupid actually gave her the cognitive flexibility to master multiple industries. The childhood instability that left her searching for identity became the superpower that let her transform herself whenever the world demanded it. Cher's real legacy isn't her music or movies or costumes. It's proof that the qualities society labels as weaknesses, being different, being too much, being unwilling to stay in one box, are actually the ingredients of immortality. She showed us that survival isn't just about enduring. It's about transforming abandonment into absolute self-determination, limitations into liberation, and pain into power that refuses to be silenced. Which revelation about the real Cher shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this deep dive into Cher's hidden story moved you, smash that like button and subscribe for more untold stories of the icons who shaped our world. Trust me, what we're uncovering next will completely change how you see another legend.